What's going on everyone, welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be working on the Civic and hopefully I'm going to be showing you how to free off a rear brake caliper or how to repair a seized brake caliper on a car. It's the rear passenger side caliper that's seized, so I'm going to be taking it all off, freeing it up, re-lubricating the caliper slides and putting it all back together because it's been seized and been sticking for a while now, and I've been sort of nursing the car a little bit to try not use it as much as I'd like to, and I really need to sort it because I need to be somewhere on Sunday. Hopefully you'll subscribe and catch the next video on Sunday where I go and meet Leadfoot Ash and we go for a little drive round. So let's crack on with it and let's see if we can get it done. So this is the offending wheel and the offending brake caliper, shall we say. That particular caliper there has been sticking a tiny bit as I've been driving round, and I want to apologise as well in advance for any wind noise. It is a little bit windy today. But before we jack the car up and get the wheel off, so one of the things I like to do is I like to just loosen the cap on the brake master cylinder, and what that does is once you've loosened it is it just breaks the air seal, if you like. So if we are squeezing a caliper on the rear quarter of the car, it lets the brake fluid travel in the master cylinder reservoir without any air pressure stopping it from travelling up the system. And I'll remember to close it again if I leave the bonnet open. Next, you want to make sure your handbrake's released. You don't want any brake pressure when you're trying to release the rear caliper from the disc at the back when you're removing it. As I'm working on the rear, I've left the car in gear. I've put it in first gear to make sure that the car's stationary from the front axle and so that it stops it from rolling. And for added reassurance, I've put a brick on the driver's side wheel because that will be in contact with the floor as I'm jacking up the other side. Now, I just thought I'd check it and just trying to rotate it. It is basically seized. I did get a turn on it with both hands, but I can't do it with just one hand and holding the camera. But yeah, this caliper definitely needs to be freed off. So now what I'm looking at is getting this shield off, this dust shield here for the back of the caliper that sort of protects it. I'm then going to be hopefully getting these two bolts off. But that's the caliper slide there at the top. There's another one there at the bottom, and there's bolts that correspond to those slides, both top and bottom. I'll be getting off just on the other side of that caliper. So there we go, that's the brake shield off. And I forgot, but always have a axle stand so that you don't drop your car on your leg, because that hurts. Yeah, there's the brake dust shield, and there's the 210mm that hold it on. And they did come off really easy, and I wondered why. And it's because they've got copper slip on from the previous gents that worked on the car, so thank you very much for that. Next step then is to get the brake caliper backed off enough so that we can free off the caliper itself from the brake carrier, and then we'll be able to undo these two and start working the caliper slides. So that's the two 12mm that were sat in the back there in the caliper slide. Both the top and the bottom have been removed. So two 12mm bolts to one side. So now I should be able to, you can see there's a bit of movement there, which is nice. Should be able to get this caliper off just enough, and I'll need two hands for it, to get to the caliper carrier, and then I'll be able to get to the caliper slides and be able to remove those. now that the caliper's off, I'm going to try and rotate the caliper itself, the piston should I say, in the caliper itself. I'm going to try and rotate it, and when you rotate it on the rear calipers, it should wind it in or wind it out. Now I want to wind it in just a fraction, so I'm going to try and do that so that I can get the caliper back on nice and easy. Well, that's the plan, and it is. The slides I think that are a little bit stiff. Feeling them, yeah, they are. So I'm gonna do that now. So now that everything's disassembled, I can see a couple of issues, and they are that the pads themselves are sort of stuck, if you like, within the caliper. Well, the slides, you know, the shims within the caliper carrier. So they need taking out, and then I'm gonna clean up the edges. Same on that side. See if I can clean up these shims as well. That's the top. Just how covered in like crud they are, look. So yeah, not good. The slides don't actually feel too bad, which then makes me think it might be the caliper itself, which isn't good. But I'm gonna get these slides off. I'm gonna see if I can loosen them up a little bit, clean up all the shims, the pads themselves, and yeah, just try and free it all up. And I might have to borrow my dad's caliper wind back tool, but usually 9 times out of 10 it's the slides that are seized, and they do feel quite stiff. So what you do is you pull them out like so, clean them up, clean the insides of this up as well, and slide them back in, all lubricated up. But yeah, they feel nice and loose as it goes, so I don't think that's the problem. So I'll get to cleaning the rest of it. So as you may or may not be able to see, depending on how well the camera's focused, I've cleaned up the shims that the pads slide on. I've also cleaned up the edges of the pad that the pads move backwards and forwards on those shims, so they will go there, and that goes in nice and easy, moves about nice and easy as well, unlike earlier, which is how it should be. Now I need to get, wherever it is, the other side, throw this in. There we go, nice and easy. Now I need to get the wind back tool, because these have been pulled out completely and freed off of the slides, and there's nothing wrong with them, perfectly fine. So I'm going to leave them as they are in situ. They are moving nice and freely, so I think it's probably the caliper. Now I'm going to wind it all the way back in, throw it on, and hopefully it frees off with the brakes. But I don't know what else it could be. I might take these off just to be doubly certain. Just make sure it's not the slides. So yeah, I'll probably do that next before winding back the piston within the caliper. And as you can see there, it's just that piston there that rotates clockwise, and it should go all the way back into the piston. Once it's rotated clockwise, then it'll slide over nicely. And if you're wondering how I clean them, the simple solution is a bit of sandpaper. I've also put a little blob of this stuff that they call pad goo. This pad goo stuff, like a non-metal based lubricant. It's metal free. It's for metal to metal braking components, so it's ideal for where the pads slide on the shims there. So after that last clip that you just saw, I started running out of daylight really quickly, so it was a bit of a race against time to try and throw it all back together. But what I did do is, and as you will see now, is I cleaned the caliper slides as well, just to be doubly sure. I pulled the boots off, the little rubber boots that go on the end of the caliper slides. I used like a pipe cleaner to clean inside the caliper slides on the caliper carrier. Put the boot back on, then put the caliper slide back in with some lubrication. Some of that pad goo grease, I used that. I then wound back the caliper. Once I'd got a quarter of a turn on the piston on the caliper, and I did that as you can probably see with the long nose pliers. Once I'd got a quarter of a turn on it, it freed off the piston so much within the caliper. So I was quite lucky that everything needed cleaning and sort of, you know, moving and freeing off. But that's normally the case with calipers when they start sticking and seizing on. It's normally the caliper slides. I did them just to be sure, but they were quite free on my particular car. And what I do think it was is I think it was the pads, the shims that the pads slide in, and the caliper itself and the piston within the caliper, because that was very stiff initially. But once, like I say, once I got a quarter of a turn on it, it was perfectly fine then, and it worked well. It's all back together. I've been on a big like 400 mile round road trip since, with Leadfoot Ash, which will be the video after this one. But yeah, perfectly fine now. So that's how you free off a seized caliper. They're the components that you'd look at, clean up, re-lubricate, and you know, you push the caliper back on the rear, get it free, get it moving nice and freely, you know, easy to rotate, shall we say, within the caliper itself, get that piston rotating easily, and you don't need any specialist tools really. If the caliper was really seized, the piston itself, then you'd need a caliper tool, a caliper wind back tool, but thankfully I was just able to do it, as I say, with the long nose pliers. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this video was useful for you. I hope you got some useful information out of it if you're in a similar position. If it was useful, then please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't done so already, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.